Hi, I'm Tim Von Rieden here at cgcookie.com, and welcome to this turnaround tutorial on creating a pilot. And these were originally done for Blender Cookie for Jonathan, and he wanted me to create a plane and a pilot that fit in this world that was more of like a Pixar feel and had a cartoony sense to it. So then when I was going about creating the turnarounds, I thought this would be a great opportunity to show you guys how I would go about creating a character turnaround that isn't so lifelike, and it features more or focuses more on the different shapes of the character and then building upon those rather than doing like the 8-head setup, making sure everything's anatomically correct. So this will be my kind of quick tutorial on going through that. So with that, let's get started. And here's the final concept image of the pilot that I created. And this was such a fun piece for me to work on, and it was one of those that, like, as soon as you started with the sketches, you just felt it and you knew that it was going to go smoothly all the way through. So this one took me about 2.5 hours to create, and as soon as I finished, I needed to create a turnaround for it. So the first thing that I like to do, no matter what the proportions of the character, are create these guidelines that will help me kind of set up the different proportions of that character. So then I'll look for main features that are set on the character, like the bottom of the chin, the top of the head, the bottom of the feet, where the elbows are, the top of the shoulders, just key things like that that you want to look out for, and then you just create lines all the way across, and you do that by holding shift and just drag your pen across, or you could even create lines if you really wanted to with the shape tool. So then from there, I'll create a really sketchy version of what I think this character it will look like from the front view, because that's the first one I'm doing. And for something like this, if I'm trying to help the modeler out, so in this case, I was trying to help show Jay like what the underlying proportions of this character would be. So I'm just doing a base sketch of what he would look like without that heavy jacket and the scarf, and just show what his proportions would be. And the most important thing to remember about doing turnarounds is you only have to work on half of them for the front and back view, and then you can just copy over what you have and then flip it horizontally to get the same effect on the other side. And it'll save you a lot of time. And you might think, well, what if there's something that, is on the side specific? So if there's something on his left side that isn't on his right side, well, then you can still create it after you flip over the initial proportions and then just draw on top of it. And then same goes with the face. So things like the eye, I'll try to zoom in and create one really nice eye and then flip it and see what it looks like on the other side. And then from there, I'll kind of move them around and make sure it looks correct. And then, so here's like the hair. Since the hair isn't the same on both sides of the face, I'll go in and individually do each side. And I'm doing all these, like I'll do a new layer for each. So like this detail work that I'm putting in right now on the hat, I'll put on a new layer initially, because if I really don't think it looks great, or if it just doesn't turn out the way I wanted, then I can just delete that layer without having to go in with an eraser and try to erase all the mistakes that I think I made. And same thing, just doing a quick copy and paste, and then I'm flipping it horizontally. Give him a nice smirk like he has in the concept. And if your image is becoming a little too light, then I just will copy the layer, and what to do that, you just literally grab the layer and drag it down to the bottom where you would create a new layer, and it pretty much creates a duplicate of that layer right on top. Then I'll just merge the two down with Command E. And you might be seeing that I'm going in this weird filter mode where I'm like moving around the image, and that's the liquefy filter. And what that will do is it'll allow me to create like quick little edits on my character, but that also makes it like it can make your line work very smudgy. So I try to avoid using that as much as possible and just rely purely on the line work. And if you're an artist like me where you don't feel like your line work is nearly as strong as the other areas in concept art, like for me, I feel very comfortable using color and just kind of playing with that. But for doing straight line work, it's more of a challenge for me. So I really have to zoom in and focus and really control my line width and think about what I'm doing the entire time. So if this is something that isn't as comfortable for you as well, just know, I mean, there's people like me that have the same problem, and as much as I practice, it does take some time to get used to it. So if your line work looks kind of sloppy from the start, just know, like, it's not going to look perfect the first time you try doing stuff like this. So then from here, I'm just creating half of the pants, erasing the underlying leg anatomy, and then I'll just copy it over and flip it to the other side. And even though I'm erasing the anatomy, that doesn't mean that I'm erasing it completely, because I made a duplicate of the anatomy layer before I even put the clothes on. And that's if like I really don't think the clothes looked right after I finished, then I would just delete the clothes layer and then re-bring up that anatomy layer that I have. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and create the back view. So this is a really easy trick for you guys to use if you're going to create the back view in the same position and pose. So what you do is you copy the front view and literally you erase everything inside of the line art, and then you just edit it so you would look like it was being viewed from the back of the character. Because the edge work would still be the exact same, especially in your proportions, and this really helps out the modeler as well, because everything will be the exact same from the front and back view. And then you're just going in and creating what the back view would look like. So then I'll delete half of it. I'll go in, finish my different line work. And then here I'm like focusing on, well, if the knee is bending, that's going to affect the way the pants are wrinkling. So I want to define it more in the back than I would on the front. And then here I'm just putting a little decal on the back for Concept Cookie and kind of CG Cookie in general. Anyways, it's pretty cool to have a logo on the back of a pilot jacket, so I figured, why not? And this is another one of those things where I use the shape tool instead of trying to make a perfect circle with my brush. And I can then edit the line width at the very top. There's like settings that you can change. So I tried to make the line width somewhat similar to the different brush strokes that I'm using all around. Then I'll delete the reference that I drew on top of and then go from there. So as I go about creating the side view, I'm going to bring up those guidelines that I created before, and I'm going to use those to create my side view. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the front view, and I'm going to look for the big shapes of the character and sketch them out first. And that'll give me guidelines for myself to work upon after. And you can see that the different shapes, so like for the body, I'm just using like almost a bean shape. The head is more of that circular with that rounded square for the hat. And then I'll go in on a new layer and I'll just rough out the initial sketch of the character. And then this will help me sort of set guidelines to draw the defining final line work on top of it. So this is just to help me visually interpret the character. And doing side view is usually pretty fun because you get to see the character at a different angle. You get to add different features that you wouldn't see from the front or the back. So like the side of the hat and what would be inside of that earpiece you wouldn't be able to see. And this is especially useful for a modeler because front and side view are the probably two primary things, and then the back view would be third, and then from there the top and the bottom views are usually irrelevant if you have the front, back, and side. So these are the three major ones you definitely want to make sure you get for your modeler. So in here I'm just going in and I'm trying to define all the different edge work that I have. And then I'll bring the front view closer so I can make sure that the nose and the eyes are lining up with each other. Because I would say the face is probably the biggest problem when it comes to doing character turnarounds. And that's usually because the eyes don't match or the noses just aren't level with each other. And then the modeler kind of has to guess on where to place different shapes and objects. And you want to make it easier on your modeler. You want to work with them to create the concept that you created. So then here I'm going in and I've created the side of the ear pieces with the circle tool again. And you want to be conscious of the shape tools that you have at your disposal. So if there's something that'll make doing it easier for you, then might as well use your tools to your advantage. So in here I noticed that the bill of the cap was a little too upright and it needs to line up with the edge of the front view to make sure that when it's in the modeling process it lines up with each other. Then I'll go around, get to the jacket, and I'm just trying to match up those lines. They're kind of hard to see because I have it at such a low opacity, the layer that has the different guidelines, but I'm using those to help me place all my different line work. And then for the arm, I usually place the arm right next to the side view, and that's because for the modeler, sometimes they just want to see what the jacket would look like, especially if there was anything underneath the arm that was important. So then from there, I'll lower the opacity of both the front and side view, and then I'll create the arm on a new layer. And then once I finish creating the arm, I'll just move it off to the side so that the modeler can then take it if they want and then move it back over the body, or they can just keep it to the side and then model the arm as is. So then after I move it to the side, I would crop it again to better fit the 4 turnaround pieces that I have. And that was my way of creating a cartoon character turnaround. And in the download resources, you can actually download the front side back view with the PSD of the pilot himself. And then hopefully you'll get to see this guy modeled in a future tutorial series. Thanks for watching.